how can we help our people start looking as true merchants, how they're managing their stores? It's not just about putting coffee out your window. It's about how you're controlling your inventory and therefore saving the company money, because nobody wants to lose a bunch of cash onto the shelves of their business, right? Your managers are probably thinking to themselves, the more I stock up, the better, because I don't want to look like a jackass that runs out of something, right? But that's not always the way that you want to run your business. You want to be cash savvy, cash smart.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-through openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
I just thought I'd at least kick off some conversation starters on how we've been helping people manage their cost of goods. So Ben, do you have any follow-up thoughts on that? Essentially, how can we help stores stay most profitable? And a lot of times that comes from controlling how we're spending. So Ben, you want to talk about that just for a minute?
For some reason, I think people forget how much they need to budget when they're either when they're a store owner or operator or manager. I mean, it's just paying good attention to your cost of goods. It's just like managing your own whole budget. I got to make sure that I know how much I'm spending each month on my mortgage. Like, I didn't know that. If I had no awareness around that, at the end of every month, I'd be like, oh, shit, I have to pay my mortgage. The same thing goes with your business. Like, you have to be aware of how much you're spending each month, and your COGS is the largest chunk. You're going to be outside of maybe, a lease. But even then, like, your COGS, if you're a busy shop, your COGS is going to be the largest percentage of cash that you're spending out your store. And so to just not be aware of exactly how much that is, or not be tracking that weekly, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, just from a personal standpoint of knowing how much money you have or you don't have. So
Drew and I were talking about, we've got Coffee Masterclass coming up. For those of you guys who don't know, we have Coffee Masterclass coming out next week. We're kicking off. It's going to be opening my first drive-through. So my first drive-through.coffee is where the URL is going to be. The website will be up in the next couple of days, but essentially walking people through the mechanics of what they need to open their first coffee drive-through. But when Drew and I were talking about it yesterday, Ben, when you were feigning sick, when you had been out, but you and Steven were out too late the night before, whatever, sick yesterday, Drew and I were talking about, for a lot of people coming in, I think they're just at the basic level, right? Maybe they've been running stores, maybe they've been working for other people, but a lot of times they don't know what they don't know until it's too late. I talk about, my first business venture, how I lost 200 grand and had to shut down my business because I thought I understood from running somebody else's business how to run my own. And I got myself into hot water and lost 200K out of value in my house, and then had all of the shame and all of the embarrassment of having to sell off equipment and sell off inventory from the back of a U-Haul, driving around to different parking lots throughout my town just to try and make back up some of the money. So there are some things where it's like, there's simple levels of business and there's complex levels of business. And I think my hope for us with Coffee Experts is, let's help people in the on-ramp, right? Like, there's no shame whatever stage of the journey you're on. If you've never opened a coffee joint before, if you've run a couple of coffee joints, if it's a big chain coffee that you're working with, there's different levels all the way up, but lean back into people who've been there before. And one of the best ways to control would be through your cost of goods sold. Like, that's next level stuff. It's not just putting cups of coffee out your window. That's the first thing, right? Everybody's stressed about opening, right? CJ and Lindsay just did their second grand opening, right? All the stress is around, is my POS ready, right? Is my point of sale system up and ready? Do I have all the right supplies? Have I trained my people? Is my manager prepped? How is the existing store going to do with this new store starting, right? It's all those things, but then you can easily lose track of, holy, am I even watching my cost of goods? Is that even something that I'm keeping an eye on? Because you get so lost in the forest or the trees that you take your eye off the ball and realize, no, but if your store isn't profitable, none of those things matter, right? You can have the best point of sale system. You could have the best manager anybody's ever seen. You could be, opening and closing like a dream, like all of the systems that people at simple level coffee business master. But if you're not watching your cost of goods, if you're not watching your profitability, that can bite you in the ass. And in the end, that's what's going to take you down even more than these other things. because this simple level business stuff, that's just an assumed. The next level stuff where you're starting to watch your COGS, your cost of goods sold, is really important. Phoenix had a copy or had something in the comments. She said in her experience, I saw a lot of managers just order the same thing every week because they knew what was selling, but they didn't know how much of the product they were selling. They didn't use the tech they had to monitor how much of those products they were selling. Super smart. Drew, you want to speak to that? Because I know Phoenix is your girl and we love her.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between knowing how to do something and fully understanding the process of how you're doing this thing. And so, like you mentioned, you can be running day to day operations and just know the surface level stuff, and you can be fantastic at it. But once you get back into the weeds of how everything is working behind the scenes, it takes a lot of reps and a lot of practice and a lot of understanding to get to the point where you can actually teach something. That's when you kind of know that you're, have footing in that realm.
Okay, so let's say we do master COGS, like Phoenix is talking about. Steven even talked about it too. Like, you're right. It's not like you go to the grocery store. It's a great analogies as far as like to manage, get them out of the mindset of stocking the shelves full like the grocery store, but ordering off the needs of the store. I think that's totally hits the nail on the head. Steven's pretty smart dude. Pretty smart, a little smart. But Jarek asked a good question of, okay, so let's say you've got it mastered, this whole COGS thing. What do you do if your pricing and where you're ordering at, there's just not enough margin in there? What do you do with that? Is it something that you would go out to other vendors? Is it you go start shopping different vendors and try and bang your numbers down? Do you raise your prices? If you're somebody new coming into the space, you probably only have so much margin in that. Ben, do you have thoughts on what your modality would be in a scenario like that?
Yeah, I mean, raising prices is the last thing we want to do, right? Especially if you're in a highly competitive area where it would mean that you'd have to raise your prices higher than your competition. First thing I would do is I would start with negotiating with my vendor. Like, if you're already with that vendor, you chose them for a reason. Maybe you like their customer service, you like their ordering system. I would start with negotiations with them and just say, hey, look, these costs are killing me and it's killing my profit margins. Can we negotiate? Maybe I purchase instead of a weekly amount of vanilla syrup, I purchase from you at a discount of, 3 weeks worth or something. Can I buy in bulk somewhere with you?
Right.
Give me a discount buy in bulk in cases versus bottles and stuff like that. So, and guaranteed, I mean, if a vendor is feeling the pinch of inflation too, they're going to be trying to hold on to clients because, I mean, it doesn't matter for them to have a warehouse full of product if they can't sell it either. So I would first say, I'll always negotiate with your vendor. If that doesn't work, if they're like, nope, sorry, prices are prices, go kick rocks, then I would start looking for other vendors. There's a ton of people out there who are looking to undercut their competition. Same thing we do when you have a coffee shop. You go out and research the competition, and if I can drop my latte 25 cents lower than the competition, I'll do that. Same thing with distributors. You've got warehouse guys that will look to undercut each other. So, more often than not, you can find competitive distribution of where you can get lower prices. And then if you are the position to be able to do it, you can always think about creating the product yourself, creating your own energy drink, going with your own frat. That'll have that cost down a lot. But there's always ways to find pennies here and there. And that really is what it comes to. Comes a game of pennies and dimes and nickels and quarters, because those, add up over a month, especially if you've got 3, 4, 5 applications. Those dimes and nickels add up a lot. And if all of that fails, then, it may be time to raise prices. It's hopefully you're the last one in the kind of the block to do that.
I would say what we always tell people when we're starting to have this conversation about COGS is there are a couple of spots where there's most couching, right? As far as the most couching of opportunity for savings in it, I would say obviously beans and roasting. That's always the first one, right? If you're buying beans from somebody else, if you can cut out the middleman by getting your own roaster and buying green, training up a kid like Wes did with Cody, like all those things through the years where you can actually bang down your number by cutting out a middleman, that's always your best, right? So green is always the easiest way to do that with beans. Then looking at your milk vendors, a lot of times your milk vendors, you can get them to play against each other because there's some big money in that kind of a spend because you're buying such high volumes and quantities. So I would say beans, then milk. Maybe Jarek, you remember the John Patterson era where John really found us a lot of cash in changing milk vendors back in the day. But then I would say once you've identified those two bigs, move into a proprietary process like energy drinks, right? We know that 5 times the savings you can get out of just cutting out Red Bull, going to something you make for yourself. Frap, we were able to get 3 times the savings, right? Dropping it from like $18 per bag down to I think we got it down to like $11 per bag for big train equivalent by making your own frap. I think coming to up with those proprietary processes, I would say number one location is tough if you only have one because you're not buying probably quantity for some of those things. So establishing a quantity count of how much you're actually selling, and then that can justify the spend when you begin to buy in bulk, like what Ben's saying. At that point, when you start developing your own energy drink, you're just buying 3 months of quantity in bulk. And if you can think about it that way, if I'm just buying 3 months worth of energy drink and creating my own and dropping the floor on COGS while I've already established a traffic count of people that want energy drinks, you're growing money in that margin. So I would say those are the main things when it comes to negotiating. The other thing that you did, Ben, that I thought was really cool is find out what your competitors are charging. And then you can actually ask yourself, okay, so for this line item, for a latte with this extra flavoring, whatever it is, comparable, what are my competitors charging? What does it actually cost me? What's my retail price? And is there any margin that I can inflate into there? So I would say attacking cost of goods first, then going out and looking at your competitors' pricing, and then asking yourself, is our cup for an equivalent product in line? Do I have space to raise it? Because the next thing would be, I've already identified my COGS. I've already identified that I can't go any cheaper. I'm right at that breaking point. What are my competitors doing for the same? Asking myself, do I have any room to raise it? And then I would always suggest subtle incremental raises. Like if you do find there's a ceiling, don't raise the crap out of your orders, like slow grow your raise. Otherwise you obviously you lose people of that. Drew, if you want to speak to that, I know that's one of your passion points of like, don't throw your customers off the side of the boat.
We don't want to skip the step of just halting spending, right? Like stop all spending. Yeah. And then we go on to all those great steps. Yeah, I mean, we did several price raises over the year, and it was always an analytical move. And the rollout was sensitive time. So, in the speaking towards incremental moves, it's always smarter to, of course, do it little by little, and then it gives you the time to, of course, see the difference in where the traffic is flowing and where the money is coming in. It's not such a big hit because the customer relationship with the baristas is a big deal. So those frontline baristas are always the ones who are taking that first social hit when you do make changes to anything, really, the POSs. If you rebrand, if you are raising the prices, is almost a personal thing for customers. And because of the situation that we were in at Roasters for so long, we were a hometown brand, and so it was like a personal relationship with people. So raising prices slowly and gently, and of course, only when you have to. I would also recommend something along the lines of watching for different brands of things you can buy too, because I know one of the clients that we worked with, there was a few different brands, and even like the casing they were using, if they switched brands that use glass to brands that use plastic, there was a price difference and things like that. So yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can do.
That's a really good point because it's easy to get stuck in no, we only use this premium brand product. Yeah, we only use this premium orange clean for our counters that costs $9 a bottle when really I would just get something generic for $1.25.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't be afraid to swap out those products. And I mean, I would say you have to be careful when it comes to the products you're using for your menu, but you kind of pigeonhole yourself and you say, okay, the only thing I'm going to purchase for my distributors are their absolute premium products. Because those products get expensive really quick. You have different types of syrups, even one vanilla syrup, $5.75 a bottle. The other syrup, $7.75 a bottle, premium organic, yada, yada, yada. Which if that's what your clientele wants and it's selling really well, great. But just know that at some point you may have to think about, okay, either I raise the price on this vanilla latte or I swap out for a comparable, very similar tasting vanilla that may save me $2 a bottle. And so I wouldn't be quick to swap out my menu items, but I would never shut that out as a possibility of, you know what, maybe let's take a look at grabbing a different brand if it means saving us cash.
That's smart. I remember Lindsay started that way, right? Like that was something that you identified for her with Outsider. Lindsay was so heart set on, I want to make all my own syrups. And she was so brilliant at it, right? Like Outsider does such great stuff and they've got a really unique menu, and Lindsay switches her menu up every quarter. Like she keeps it super fresh and does some really cool specials. But there's a lot of energy that goes into that. And I know when you did some analysis, you're like, hey, be careful because some of that stuff that you're investing in your syrup costs really drives up your COGS on your per cup count. And if you really want to experience some profitability, you might want to think of subbing some of those custom syrups out for something that's an equivalent, right? That was some of the counseling that you gave them.
Yeah, I work with that, but I use that same menu retail price point analysis to just kind of show like, look, it's not like they were losing money on the cup, but weren't making nearly as much as they could have been if they tweaked some stuff. But again, if your business is like our entire clientele base is around our brand of we make our own sauces in house, then of course you don't want to get rid of that. And I think they're still doing the in house sauces and their clients love it. But if that is your thing, you're like, we have to always do in house sauces. That means you have to find some other spot in your business that you can recoup that loss or that cost. Maybe, you hire a miner who you can pay a couple dollars less an hour to make those sauces or whatever it may be. You got to find those pennies somewhere else. Maybe you switch from a specific brand of paper cup to a new brand of paper cup that's maybe not as cool, but it saves you a few cents here and there. It's the whole pigeonholing thing that always gets me worried as a business owner. Because when business owners say, this is my brand, we are known for this, you immediately go, okay, I can never change that. You can never change something. That's fine, but you got to be willing to be able to change everything else to accommodate the cost of what that thing is.
Super smart. That's really good. Drew, you got into a negotiating situation with a vendor down in Reno, helping out HV Reno, right? With their pastries. And you had to go back and forth and whittle down and like pit them against each other. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was an interesting experience because of course, everybody had their COVID habits, and the cities are different, of course, than where Tri-Cities is like. So it was a big difference in business performance, I suppose, and customer relations. But something that we negotiated on was as simple as wrapping pastries. Or we would weigh the pastries and we'd be like, hey, like this is what we're getting for a blueberry muffin that weighs this much, and you guys are selling us this one for this much. But there were direct competitors, and so it is a way to kind of get what we want. The end goal of all of this is to get the best product at the best price to the customer. And so the people that we're working with is they want the same thing, essentially, but we are in the process of, in between them and our customers. So the negotiating it's fun. It's all business relations. So it's creating relationships, nurturing those relationships and trying to make sure that they're good. We went actually through, I think they'd gone through every pastry vendor in Reno by the time we found one that we actually really liked. And actually through that process, we created a really good relationship with them because we got to, tour their facilities and we got to see them face to face quite often, and negotiate different things like when they're delivering, what times of the day they're delivering, whether or not they'll bring the pastries in for us and stock them while we're keeping them. If we quote what we're getting now from our vendors and then talk about, hey, well, if they're not doing this, not doing this, not doing this. If we are to bring you on as a new vendor, can you guys include this in your price? And what's that going to look like? So as Ben said, you find little ways to pinch those pennies and make things inclusive because those businesses want to grow too. I mean, I would imagine that a business wants to grow, keep their revenue flowing. And so any way that you can, I mean, especially if you're a growing business or if you have aspirations to grow, you can work that into the conversation because that's a future contract for them of new stores. You can say, hey, this is the average sales that we're getting at these stores. I'm at one store, and this is what we're expecting at a new store. So your contract is going to either double, or whatever the size is of your business. And I think that's a really good leverage point too.
I think it's great. I mean, I think that once you have so many of your eggs in one basket, like it only benefits that guy to consider making you even happier. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about this? What if we included this? Jarek asked in the comments, when do you make a roaster decision? Like, when do you make some of these proprietary energy drinks decisions? I would always say 3 stores is where I would say you're starting to create enough working capital where you can justify making some investments, unless you're coming to the table with a bunch of working capital. I met with a new coffee shop up in Great Falls, Montana. Great family, come out of Black Rock, right? Had a little bit of disillusionment being bought out of their franchise, but it was the fuel for the fire to go start something on their own. I told them we always love working with independents, people that are out there doing their own thing. They have 10 years in coffee, they have experience, and they've got working capital and are looking to invest in. We want to develop our own proprietary energy drink. We want to develop our own frap because they realize the recognized savings. And if you've got working capital and you can roll that into making money out of the gates, it allows you to really get aggressive on your pricing and really get punchy coming out of the gates and really show people what profitability can look like with coffee. So I think that it depends on where you're at in the game. If you're just new, you're just new, you're opening up your first 1, 2, 3 shops. Like Wes bootstrapped it. Wes didn't come from money, so Wes had to bootstrap it with whatever he had. Sometimes you just got to be scrappy and get in the game and play with whatever you got. But as you're starting to build equity in your business, Start looking for good opportunities to make investment where you can drop your cogs because you've already established your traffic count. And then, like we said, you're just growing money. You've already proven people are going to pay $6 for that drink you're putting out the window. If you can drop your cost of goods down sub $2, you just made $4 of profit on that cup of coffee. And where else can you get return on money like that, right? We're going to talk about that on the coffee masterclass coming up next week for your first coffee drive-through. Like, bottom line is people invest in coffee not only because it's low price of entry to enter, but also because you can be scrappy and bootstrap something and potentially make good profit out of it. The way you make good profit about it is to be really, really intentional about how you're making decisions and what you're investing on when you're investing in it. So just being strategic, leaning back into experts that have been just out in front of you. Maybe you've run coffee, maybe you know coffee to a certain level, but do you know it at all those levels? And there's no way we can all know everything, right? So that's why Steven's a great ad, Drew's a great ad, Ben's a great ad. Coming into a group like this, hearing from Jared's, hearing from Phoenix's, hearing from Mason's, all these people that have great things to say, great comments to add. And then collectively, we all benefit from each other's wisdom and we can all go out and continue to make great coffee. All righty, guys. Well, that felt good. Anything else? Anybody got just a good piece of wisdom? You see anybody have some just brilliance just beaming out of you?
I would just say this industry that we're all in is so massive and so relational. As you said, lean into your relationships, learn with people that are also learning, because in a group like this, we learn together and we learn so much faster. And it's almost like inspiration is a progress multiplier, but when you're all inspired to work together to solve these things, it multiplies about that much more.
Yeah. And realize this is that I know it was so cool that we started a little boxer channel with Lindsay from Outsider as she was in the middle of her grand opening. I think that's the blessing of being in Coffee Experts and just being able to talk about, hey, what are you guys seeing on this, and this? Hey, how have you guys been dealing with this, and this? I think that it's so cool just to have something to fall back into that you can reach out to that way. All righty, guys. See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.